The longest qualifying session in history has concluded lasting 2 hours, and ultimately we saw Verstappen take pole position. However, we need to first analyze the Ferrari disaster because, guys, seeing Charles Leclerc crash into the wall at turn 15, Lewis Hamilton excluded in Q2, with Leclerc ending up 10th and Hamilton 12th, was an unpredictable scenario before these qualifiers. We always say Ferrari is the champion on Fridays, and once again it's true, but then on Saturday, everything turns against Ferrari. Let's say this situation here is truly disastrous. Let's analyze each episode in detail. Before we start, I obviously remind you to subscribe, activate notifications so you don't miss any Formula 1 or Ferrari themed videos. We analyze every single episode. We also look at the telemetry and leave a like to support my work and the videos here on the channel. As always, if you like the videos, leave a comment below so we can debate together all the episodes that happen on the track, and I will respond to all comments. That said, let's start right away with the analysis. Before talking about Max's pole, I want to discuss the situation with Leclerc and Ferrari. Let's start with Leclerc's case and then move on to Hamilton. We saw a very disappointed Leclerc due to the mistake. It's not the first time he's made a mistake at turn 15. We saw it happen in 2025 during qualifying. We also saw it in 2024, and even in 2021 he made that mistake. And we also remember Leclerc's mistake in 2019 in the castle section during qualifying. So it's already happened that Leclerc made a mistake here in Baku. Leclerc is an extremely strong driver, but also extremely dependent on front grip. And this also calls for a technical discussion, but I want to do that later. First, let's look at Leclerc's accident, and then we'll have this discussion, which is fundamental. In fact, let's take a moment to look at the dynamics of Charles's accident and comment on it together. Indeed, Charles arrives here at turn 15. We see here that he loses the lock on the front left. In this case, it's too late to decide to go straight into the escape route, so he decides to take the turn. But he can't make it. He's too slow at this point to turn to make the car rotate, and so he crashes into the wall. Yep. Why did Charles make this mistake? This mistake is due to the conditions, certainly not optimal conditions, especially at this point on the track. And so there was little grip on the track. Adding to this situation, he had medium tires. Medium tires guarantee more grip at the rear because the tire heats up less, but less grip at the front. Because you manage to bring less energy, you struggle more to bring the tires to temperature on the front part of the car. So on the front tires. And this is Charles's problem. He is very dependent on the temperatures of the front tires. And we see this because he drives with a lot of oversteer. We've also seen several analyses that show he enters the turn very strongly, brakes later than others, but then rotates the car at the last moment. That rotating the car at the last moment works when you have grip on the track, and when the temperatures are higher, you struggle much more when the temperatures are low, and even more so when it starts to rain. This is the nature of Leclerc's mistake, his 100% mistake, obviously due to the conditions. Unfortunately, Charles was also unlucky because at that moment he was at that point on the track where it was raining a bit more. So certainly if he had found himself at another point on the track, he could have avoided this mistake. A mistake that weighs heavily on a weekend where Ferrari, as I also said yesterday, was very competitive. Everyone expected at least a top 5, maybe even a top 3, some even pole position from Ferrari, but it didn't happen. So an incredible disappointment for Charles, a shame because we know how much he cares about performing well with Ferrari, especially in Baku. So we saw a series of red flags. This was somewhat the reason for this qualifying session that lasted 2 hours, and we saw many red flags even in Q3. But let's take a small step back and go to number 1. Let's talk about Hamilton, because Hamilton made some very important statements, and I shall show them to you. I'll move to the other side so we can read them together. In fact, Hamilton struggled to accept this exclusion from Q2 in the end. We found him 12th, and it's not so much his fault in the sense that obviously he had a chance to set a time in qualifying. But guys, let's briefly look at the tire section between the times. Then we'll also analyze the statements. But if we see Hamilton here 12th, we see that he set all the times with soft tires. He only had 2 sets of medium tires, unlike the others who had 3. And with Hamilton, they wanted to keep the medium tires for later. They only ran with soft tires, and this limited Hamilton a lot in Q2 because he didn't have enough grip on the rear tires. he was overheating the rear tires too much. They weren't reaching the right temperature, meaning they were overheating too much, and he couldn't find grip. In fact, as he also complained in the statements that we are now going to revisit. We see that Hamilton had few medium tires, and this didn't allow him. If he had done the lap with medium tires, he could have qualified in Q2 and improved. Instead, having only done the time with soft tires, he couldn't improve enough. He made an attempt. It didn't go well. He then made a mistake and didn't have enough fuel to replicate, to make another attempt. And then there was also the time that was no longer, there was no more time available essentially. And so it's a shame for Hamilton for this exclusion, because this thing doesn't depend only on him. That is, the exclusion in Q2 doesn't depend only on Lewis Hamilton, but also on Ferrari's choice not to allocate enough medium tires for the 7-time world champion. And he also said this later in the press conference that took place after the interview. And so it's a shame for Hamilton because it was a weekend where he started well in free practice 1. He was strong in free practice 2. He was also strong there and could have found the rhythm to go up front. Maybe not pole, but he could have made a top 3, a top 5, and could have kept up with Charles. The problem is that it conditioned him a lot, the tires. And so the best choice, as I also said yesterday, would have been to mount the softs at the front and the mediums at the rear, so as to have enough grip at the front to brake hard as Charles wanted, who instead had the mediums when he made the mistake, and have enough grip at the rear that Hamilton couldn't qualify because he had the softs at the front. Instead, the mediums were needed. You understand well the different needs of the drivers, and analyzed from this point of view, they make sense and make us fully understand why a Formula 1 driver, a 7-time world champion, a driver not titled but considered by everyone as the idol in qualifying, namely Leclerc, make these mistakes. Analyzing in detail the tires, the situations, the grip of the track, the conditions of the track, we can understand why a driver makes mistakes, why a driver is more satisfied or less satisfied at a moment of the session, in this case of the qualifying. And for this, there is the bitterness, the nervousness of Hamilton, because I also experienced it watching from the outside. I saw, damn, Hamilton had the chance at least to go into Q3. He had it. But he blew it a bit due to his mistake, a bit also due to Ferrari's strategy. This is the reality of the facts, and it's bitter to digest because it's a weekend where Ferrari was strong, could have made top 5 with both drivers. Instead, we see Leclerc 10th and Hamilton 12th. Sorry if I went on for so long, but I wanted to say my piece on Ferrari. I'm curious to read your opinion in the comments. Now, we will also resume the Ferrari theme later. First, I want to make a parenthesis on Verstappen. Verstappen takes pole position like the world champion he is. 4-time world champion. A masterpiece of a lap at the end, guys, with 3 minutes and 41 seconds left at the end of Q3. He goes on track, makes one attempt, and manages to set the pole time, beating Sainz by 0.4 seconds, but above all beating Norris by 1.1 seconds. 1.1 seconds to Norris, when Norris had the better car. And so Verstappen in these conditions, when there is a mixed track or wet, slippery track conditions, he manages to excel and make a difference over all the others. Among other things here, the difference Max made was not so much of the car or feeling, but also of courage, because in Baku courage also comes into play a lot after seeing so many red flags that there were in the session. If we also look together here at the history, we see all the red flags that there were. So many. From the start of qualifying, I count 5 red flags if I'm not mistaken. He, despite 5 red flags, went on track, made his time, and put himself in pole position. He doesn't need it because he's not fighting for the world championship, neither the drivers' championship nor the constructors. So he doesn't need to make that time, but he does it. And so hats off to Max, who once again performed a miracle. Second, Sainz, great Sainz, because Williams was struggling during this period. He managed to do much better than his teammate, who is 20th. He managed to reach Q3, but not only that, he was on pole until just a few minutes before the end of Q3. Among other things, it was a bit of a scam, we can call it that they didn't give the pole to Sainz because it was missing. They had restarted the session when, in my opinion, they waited too long. Almost there was a red flag to restart the session, to wait for the dry track. That said, however, it's okay that in the end they restarted the session. Sainz conquered a second position, which for him is fundamental, especially for the championship. In fact, if we also see the standings, we see that Sainz at this moment is 18th with 16 points, while Albon is 7th with 70 points. So if he were to get a good result, a good placement, let's imagine even a top 5, top 8, It would be a big deal. Also, because he would gain many points compared to his teammate who probably won't get there tomorrow. So big stuff for Sainz. Third, Rosen, great lap for him too. Fourth, Antonelli, amazing Kimi, guys. Let's give Kimi some credit when it's due because he's been really beaten down lately and he doesn't deserve it. He definitely needs some time to grow. He's 19 years old, just a kid. Do we remember Russell when he was his age at Williams? Do we remember Max at his age? I mean, we need to let drivers grow and give them some time. In fact, even Toto Wolff understands this and acts as a mental coach for Kimi. I'll let you hear his team radio. Let's see if we can retrieve it, which would be very interesting. If I'm not mistaken, this is it.
You know, Kimi, you have tons of times. Just needs 6.5 minutes, just one clean lap.
This is Toto Wolff's team radio, essentially telling Kimi, you have plenty of time. You have 6.5 minutes. This was in Q1 to do the lap. Kimi was excluded at that moment. Come on, you can do it. He acts as a mental coach, a father, and managed to qualify in Q1 to go to Q2. But not only that, he made it to Q3. And in Q3, he was ahead of Russell. Fourth, Kimi. So great performance by Kimi. And it needs to be said when he does well. Credit must be given because finishing fourth at 19 years old ahead of Russell, who last year put behind a 7-time world champion like Lewis Hamilton, even in qualifying, is a big deal. Great Kimi. 6th Tsunoda, 7th Norris. Let's talk about Norris, 7. In my opinion, guys, Norris didn't take advantage of this session in his own way. He should have tried to qualify as far ahead as possible. He only finished 7th with a McLaren when his teammate Piastri crashes, making one of the few mistakes of his career. Piastri's last mistake in qualifying was 2 years ago. Piastri makes this mistake, which we forgive, because in such a long championship, it's understandable to make a mistake. Obviously, it would have been better not to make it, that's obvious to say, but it's understandable that these mistakes happen. Norris has a checkpoint. He has a chance to do much better than his teammate and recover the advantage he currently has in the standings. If I'm not mistaken, now about 30 points more or less, let's see, they are 41 points if I'm not mistaken. 41 points difference. So, I mean, you have to try to take advantage of this advantage you have in your own way. Norris didn't take advantage of it. He only finished 7th. But what saddens me is seeing him 7th behind Tsunoda, behind Russell, behind Antonelli, behind Lawson, behind Sainz. I mean, I can understand if you finish behind Verstappen 2nd, but finishing behind all these with only Jarka behind because the other two crashed in Q3. Well, guys, this is a performance by Norris that is not world champion material. Let's be clear. So he needs to wake up a bit. We'll see if tomorrow he manages to have a better race or loses more points to Piastri, who still starts close to him. But definitely a checkpoint for Norris not taken advantage of. This is really a shame because he could have done much better. Piastri and Leclerc. We mentioned Piastri's mistake. It's understandable that he made it. He shouldn't have made it. But today, many drivers made mistakes, both experienced and not. Leclerc's mistake also comes at a difficult time, especially for the situation Ferrari is experiencing. But a comprehensible mistake given the conditions. So this is a bit the situation, a great disappointment. Let's also look at the telemetry together, but first I'll show you the qualifying comparison, which we were also talking about on Sky. Practically the difference in qualifying between the various teammates, between Leclerc and the teammate he raced with. Always beaten everyone, by the way, 12-19 against Vettel, 12-9. Leclerc was ahead of a 4-time world champion who came from the period before Red Bull. Then was in the last years at Ferrari. I mean, beating him like this in the first year at Ferrari for Leclerc, a big deal. And then he always put his teammates behind. So remarkable also against Sainz and now also against Hamilton. He officially won this debate, this qualifying comparison. That said, also the streak of poles by Leclerc is interrupted. In fact, we see here the 4 consecutive poles won by Leclerc, and here it is interrupted with this mistake made in qualifying by Charles, who only places 10th. A shame, really a shame. I got really nervous when I saw Leclerc's mistake. Also, because he could have done better, he should have done better, but it was a situation where Ferrari was pushing to the limit. The conditions weren't ideal. The temperature was 5 to 7 degrees colder, and that has a big impact. In fact, we saw other mistakes too. For example, this one by Hamilton. He went off at a corner. In this case, we see.
So this is Lewis Hamilton.
This is a long wait. I'll show it to you again. Let's go slowly here. You see the lockup. He goes long. Many mistakes by Ferrari drivers. Sorry. I'll show it to you now. Let's start again from here. Arrives in braking. There's a slight lockup of the front left here with soft tires and makes this mistake. In short, many mistakes by the Ferrari drivers that they have made. Really a shame. Certainly another thing we've seen, also the choice of different rear wings by the Ferrari drivers. We see here the choice of a very unloaded rear wing. After Hamilton also chose Leclerc's wing, but a very unloaded wing, and Leclerc, despite this very unloaded wing, performed excellently in the corners, and we'll see tomorrow how this wing will behave, because it's a wing that certainly allows you to go fast in qualifying. In the race, you're a bit more unloaded, you go fast in terms of efficiency speed, but the DRS is smaller, so you have less difference between the top speed without and with DRS. So it won't be easy for Ferrari, they'll have to try to recover, but the top speed is one of the strengths of the red car. So let's hope they'll do well. Having said that, I think I've talked a bit about all the episodes we've seen. We've also seen, let's comment on some more marginal episodes if we want. We've seen Hülkenberg's mistake. Then Behrmann's mistake, who also parked, went into the wall, broke the suspension, Hülkenberg the same. We've seen Gasly's mistake and then Colapinto's Bopines excluded in Q1. And we've seen Briatore's face, who I think will kick Colapinto out at the end of the season. And he's right, guys. Colapinto made a very trivial mistake at that moment also, because his teammate was there in front, stopped. And he makes a mistake in that corner, losing control of the car and going into the wall, breaking the suspension. So this is a bit of a summary of the qualifying, which lasted really long. And tomorrow's race will be very particular, because if we look at the grid, let's review it together. Well, we see that anyway, we'll have a Sainz, a Lawson, a Giara also up front, who will try to make a difference, especially Sainz and Lawson. We'll also see how Kimi will behave and pay attention to the track conditions that will influence the strategy. One stop or two stops, who will go faster? Mercedes in low temperature conditions can go very fast, so let's not underestimate it. And usually Mercedes struggles more in qualifying compared to the race, so Mercedes can go strong and even conquer the podium. Verstappen is the #1 candidate to win tomorrow. Seeing the McLaren starting so far back, they don't even have that much feeling on this track. We've seen many mistakes, both by Piastri. We've also seen some mistakes by Norris, who touched the wall. In short, McLaren is not the best track. So for the podium, I'll take a risk. Tell me your prediction too, but I'll say Verstappen. I'll take a chance, Kimi. And Russell. I want to try, actually, yes, it depends a bit on the Mercedes, but I'll try Verstappen, Kimi, Russell. We'll see a bit if the podium ends up like this. But I also hope Ferrari manages to get into the top 5, but it will struggle to recover tomorrow. There are many fast cars ahead, we'll see. Maybe a crazy race, or something could mix things up. But first I wanted to show you this diff here. Let's see how in the central sector, look how Verstappen manages to go faster. Both have the blue color, so the difference isn't very noticeable. But it's clearly seen how Max manages to enter faster, who is the slightly lighter blue compared to Sainz, who struggled a bit with top speed even while Max managed to go faster. So this is the difference between Max and between Sainz and Verstappen. Please tell me your opinion in the comments. Take a risk with the predictions. Tell me how you see the situation at Ferrari. I'm curious to read and respond to all your comments. As always, of course, I remind you to subscribe, activate notifications so you don't miss any video that comes out here on the channel. Attima Formula 1, Attima Ferrari. We analyze all the sessions, the telemetry, we see everything together. And of course, I remind you to leave a like to support each video. That's all from us three. See you next time.